Hi writers, I'm Alyssa Hollingsworth, and this is my first AuthorTube video. I wanted to start off by participating in the AuthorTube newbie tag, so that's what I'll be doing today. I'll just tell you a little bit about me and then what's going to be on this channel. So let's go. Question 1. How did you find out about AuthorTube? I found out through Alexa Dunn, who is another traditionally published author who has participated for the last 2 years in WriteOnCon, which is an excellent online conference for writers of Kidlit, and everyone should check it out. It's amazing. I will probably talk about it a lot. Alexa Dunn did an introduction to AuthorTube as one of her conference events this year, and I was immediately very intrigued. I've thought about doing some kind of YouTube off and on for the past 2 years maybe, but haven't been really sure what I have to offer and what would be interesting and, yada yada, time, whatever. When I watched Alexa's videos, I started thinking maybe this is something that I could do, especially because I used to keep a fairly regular writing blog, but it's become really hard to get engagement on it. And I don't have time really to write blog entries. Somehow this seems like it might be different, like not easier, but just something different, shake things up. Question 2. What genres do you write in? I am a bit odd in that I write young adult fantasy, and that's what I actually signed my agent, my literary agent on, was a young adult fantasy manuscript. It's sort of like Venice and magic and mermaids and plague. It's very fun. So I really like young adult fantasy, especially with emphasis on kind of historic influences and folklore and that fairy tales, that sort of thing. But my debut book that I sold is actually middle grade contemporary. So where I found myself in the publishing world, or at least right now, is I write middle grade contemporary books that have fun and engaging plots, and then kind of an underbelly of humanitarian issues. Question 3. What is your preferred writing tense? When I write young adult fantasy, I always would write in third person past tense. That just felt the most natural to me. But when I started writing middle grade contemporary, it changed to first person present tense. So that's mostly what I'm writing in now. And to be honest, I really don't know what I'm going to end up in as future projects come by. I think I'll just have to take it project by project and see what I like. There are a lot of things to like about third person past. It gives you a little bit more room as an author to describe things differently, but also I really like really close third person. So a lot of the things that I think about when I'm writing third person are the same things I think about when I'm writing first person. So I don't really know why I like it more in young adult fantasy. In middle grade contemporary though, first present is just really, really fun. Question 4. Are you a plotter, a pantser, or a plancer? Well, let's think about this. My debut book, the first thing I did when my agent asked me to write it was I made this. In case you can't tell, this is a veritable scroll of outline information. I really like to use this for school visits. It always gets like a big reaction out of the kids. If you hadn't guessed from this, I am a plotter. All the way, 100%. I love to plot. If I don't plot, I don't know what's going to happen, and then I stall out and stop writing. A lot of my techniques are just trying on ideas and seeing how they go, and then following my instincts when I'm actually writing. I tend to write like really dumb things for the first several drafts, and I found that plotting actually helps me get rid of a couple of those iterations of terrible plot ideas. So I'm a plotter. Question 5. Are you self-published, published, or yet to be published? I am traditionally published. My debut is the 11th Trade. It's a middle grade contemporary about an Afghan refugee boy who is moved to Boston and loses his grandfather's prized instrument and has to go on a series of quests to try to get it back. It was based a little bit off of my sister's experiences living in Afghanistan for 9 years and by work that I've done here in the States with refugees. This is published by Roaring Brook, which is part of Macmillan in the US. It's also published by Piccadilly Press in the UK. It is also published in Holland, and it is also published in Germany most recently. It will also be coming out in France, Italy, and Japan, actually. Question 6 is, what publishing company or literary agent represents you? I've kind of already spoiled this. In the States, I am published by Roaring Brook, which is Potter Macmillan. In the UK, it's Piccadilly Press. And then further afield, it's a lot of different places. My literary agent is actually Amber Caravio from Skylark Literary Agency, and she is amazing. She's based out of the UK, and I met her at the end of my master's program over there. Question 7 is, what AuthorTube related videos can we expect on your channel? I really like helping people with craft, and especially with ideas to kind of get away from the computer and get creative and just have fun. I anticipate making a lot of things to do in your author journal, ways to creatively brainstorm, as well as some more traditional craft stuff. I love to talk about plot, obviously, plot and narrative and character voice, all that sort of thing. So expect a nice blend of straight up practical stuff and also creative and having fun stuff. I would also like to talk about my master's program in Bath. It was amazing. It had a huge influence on me as a writer, and I might be going back for my PhD. So that will be interesting. Question 8, when did you start writing? So I was telling stories from the time that I could talk. When I was little, I would tell stories to my sister every night from our bunk beds until she fell asleep. But then when I was about 11, we moved house and I got my own room, yay! But then I didn't have anyone to tell my stories to. So for a while, I was just telling them to myself, and I had to say them out loud because if I just wrote them in my head, I wouldn't remember where I left off. I just talked to myself a lot. My sister, as little sisters are prone to do, I guess, used to hide in my closet and then jump out and scare me. One day she was doing this and she heard me talking to herself, so she just opened the closet door and was like, "Who are you talking to?" And I was like, I need to stop talking to myself and start writing these down. Otherwise, people are going to think I'm crazy. From then, I just didn't really stop. I started carrying a writing journal with me literally everywhere. I finished my first kind of official manuscript when I was 18, right before I started college. The first time I started querying was with that one. So basically, I've been writing since I was 12. That's the short answer. Question 9 is, what was the first story you wrote? It was a princess story set in England, where literally I just Googled places in England that were a day's ride from London, and it's something like her father's a lord, I think, and then he finds this like amnesia boy, and then she figures out that it's actually the prince, and then she has to help him get to London, and there's some kind of betrayal and romance and stuff along the way. It was literally 50 pages long. It was a mess. Oh, but I do have another one that wasn't a complete story, and it is about a boy and his horse and their quest to seek vengeance on the murderer of the horse's mom. The murderer was the lynx. It is hilarious. If you guys are interested, I will share it with you. Number 10, what authors have most inspired you? I grew up on Tolkien and Lewis, so they were a huge influence. And I love Jane Austen. All of those influences you can see more in my young adult fantasy fiction. For middle grade contemporary, I love Catherine Applegate. She wrote The One and Only Ivan. I love Lois Lowry, who wrote the Giver Quintet. I really love books that have a lot of heart, but also like a lot of really interesting plot going on. Number 11, do you schedule writing times or do you just kind of write whenever? When I'm on deadline, I schedule like a crazy person. I've just actually turned in my 4th draft for book 2, which is The Invisible Boy. I had it scheduled so that every day I did admin tasks until about 9 o'clock. And then I did editing from about 9 o'clock to 11:30, and then took a break, and then did editing from about 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and then whatever was left, 2:30 to 3:30, and then I just have to stop. So that's like an insane deadline zone. That's what I do. I'm really bad about writing every day, and it's something that I need to do more. Question 12 is essentially, how do you do your writing, and where do you do your writing? When I am brainstorming, I really like to do it in my noveling journals. So by hand, with pretty pens, that just gives me the freedom to kind of play around a little more. When I'm actually writing, I like to write on the computer. And that's partially because I have a very fast writing speed and I have rheumatoid arthritis. So that makes it hard for me to write for long periods of time and especially to handwrite things fast. And then when I edit, I like to have a hard copy and then I mark that all up and then I type it all up. All sorts of things My methods are very special. My favorite place to do writing is at coffee shops. Predictable. I do really like the buzz of a coffee shop and the energy in it. But when you're on deadline, pretty much anywhere will do. And our final question is, what are you most looking forward to now that you're part of AuthorTube? Well, I'm really looking forward to getting a feel for the community. That's something that I really miss about blogs and things like that. So my hope is that I will be able to impart knowledge that will be useful and also get to hear from other writers. So that's the AuthorTube newbie tag. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, maybe give it a thumbs up down below and maybe leave a comment. I look forward to seeing you guys around. Until next time, keep writing.